If I had known back then what I know now, maybe I would have lived some days a little differently. Maybe I would have spoken a little softer, listened a little longer, held on to fewer grudges, and let go of more fears. After retiring over a decade ago, I found myself thinking a lot about the life I've lived, the choices I made, the ones I didn't. Some mornings, I sit quietly with my coffee, the sun warming the porch, and I ask myself, if this was my last season, would I feel at peace? The truth is, some folks reach retirement with joy, contentment, and no regrets. Others carry a weight they've held for years. So what separates them? What did they do differently? It's not luck, and it's not money. It comes down to a few simple, powerful habits. Habits I've learned through my own journey, hard lessons, quiet realizations, and choices that took courage. I want to share them with you today, not as a lecture, not as advice, but like one old friend speaking to another. These 10 habits changed the way I experience life in my later years. They brought me peace I didn't know I needed, and I believe if you open your heart, they might just do the same for you. Habit number 1, they forgive, especially themselves. Forgiveness. It's a word we hear often, but living it, that's something else entirely. In my younger years, I used to think forgiveness meant weakness, that if someone wronged me and I let it go, it somehow meant I lost. I carried that belief into my middle years, through my career, through raising kids. I held on to old arguments, words I wished I hadn't said, moments when I didn't show up the way I should have. But it wasn't until I retired, when the house got quiet and the busy days slowed down, that I started to feel the weight of it all. Memories have a way of creeping in when life finally gives you space. I began to think about the mistakes I made, the people I'd hurt, and yes, the things I wished I'd done better. And the hardest part? It wasn't forgiving others. It was forgiving myself. You see, I'm a father, and I wasn't always the father I wanted to be. I was too strict when I should have been soft. I was silent when I should have spoken. And for a long time, I let that guilt fester inside. It showed up in quiet ways, avoiding calls, hesitating to show affection, feeling like I didn't deserve to be close. But one morning, I looked in the mirror and realized something. Carrying guilt doesn't make me a better person. It just makes me a tired one. So, I sat down with a piece of paper and wrote myself a letter. I wrote down every regret, every failure, every "I'm sorry I hadn't said" out loud. And when I finished, I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I didn't burn it. I didn't throw it away. I kept it as a reminder, not of shame, but of growth. Because we can't go back, but we can choose how we carry the past. Forgiving yourself doesn't mean pretending you never made mistakes. It means choosing to be kind to yourself anyway. If you're holding something in your heart, a memory, a regret, a version of yourself you wish you could undo, maybe today is the day to stop punishing yourself. You did the best you could with who you were and what you knew, and now you know better. That's not failure, that's wisdom. Habit number 2, they reconcile broken relationships. We all have someone, that one person whose name still tugs at something deep inside when we hear it. Maybe it's a sibling, a son or daughter, an old friend. Maybe it's someone we haven't spoken to in years. Not because we stopped caring, but because something got in the way. For me, it was my older brother, Michael. We were close once. As boys, we did everything together. Fishing trips, football in the backyard, late-night talks on the roof of the garage. But somewhere along the road, life pulled us in different directions. One misunderstanding led to another, and pride did the rest. 9 years. That's how long we didn't speak. I had his number. I knew his address, but every time I thought about calling, something stopped me. A voice in my head would say, "He should be the one to reach out." And I listened to that voice. Until one day I got a call from a mutual friend. Michael had suffered a stroke. He was in the hospital, barely conscious. I remember standing in the hallway outside his room, heart pounding, palms sweating. I walked in and saw him lying there, fragile in a way I'd never seen. And suddenly, every reason we stopped talking felt meaningless. I sat beside him, took his hand and said, "I'm sorry, Mike, for all of it. Life's too short." He couldn't say much, but he looked at me. And in that moment, everything changed. We spent the last years of his life rebuilding what we lost. Not perfectly, not always easily, but with honesty. And I'll always be grateful I didn't wait any longer. If there's someone you've fallen away from, someone you still think about, don't wait for the perfect moment. It may never come. Call them, write a letter, show up. Even if they don't meet you halfway, you'll know you did your part. Broken relationships are heavy, and when we leave them unhealed, they weigh down the years we have left. But when we choose to reach out, to forgive, to ask for forgiveness, to reconnect, we lighten that load. And sometimes we get back something even more precious: peace. Habit number 3, they keep learning and growing. One of the biggest lies about aging is that we stop growing once we reach a certain age. That retirement is the finish line. That after a certain number of birthdays, life becomes all about maintenance, keeping the body going, passing the time, waiting. But I've found the opposite to be true. The people I know who are the most fulfilled in their later years, the ones who laugh easily, stay curious and still light up when they talk, are the ones who never stop learning. After I retired, I'll be honest, I felt a little lost. The routines I'd built for 40 years were suddenly gone. No more morning meetings, no deadlines, no office chatter, just quiet. And I didn't know what to do with it. For the first time, I had to ask myself, what do I want to do now that I don't have to do anything? So I tried something I never had the time or courage for when I was younger. I signed up for a local woodworking class. I didn't need to become a craftsman. I just wanted to build something with my hands. I was clumsy at first. I sanded too much. I cut things the wrong way, but slowly I found a rhythm. Then I tried learning how to cook beyond the basics. I watched videos, read recipes, burned a few pans. But something happened in the process. I started looking forward to things again. I started feeling curious again. And that's the thing. Learning isn't about becoming an expert. It's about staying open, trying, failing, laughing, feeling like a beginner again. And that feeling, it keeps you young, even when your body says otherwise. Whether it's painting, gardening, learning a new language, or just reading a book on something you never knew about, it's never too late to start. In fact, retirement is the perfect time. You're not learning for a promotion. You're learning for the joy of it. Growth doesn't stop because we got older. It stops when we believe we're done. So don't be done. Stay curious, stay open, stay in motion. Your mind, your heart, and your spirit will thank you for it. Habit number 4, they give back. There's a moment in life, usually sometime after retirement, when you realize that the world doesn't need anything more from you. Not in the way it used to. No deadlines, no meetings, no quotas to hit. And at first, that feels like freedom. But for some of us, after a while, that freedom can start to feel like emptiness. I remember that first year after I stopped working. The days were long and quiet. I had time, yes, but I also had this nagging sense that something was missing. It wasn't just structure, it was purpose. That's when I started volunteering once a week at a local food pantry. Nothing big, just helping unpack boxes, stocking shelves, greeting folks with a warm smile. It didn't seem like much, but after a few weeks, I noticed something changing. Not out there, but in me. I felt useful again. Not because I was needed in some grand way, but because I was contributing. I was showing up. I was being part of something bigger than my own quiet house. Giving back doesn't have to mean starting a nonprofit or traveling across the world. Sometimes it's calling up an old friend who's lonely. Sometimes it's offering to babysit the grandkids so your daughter can take a break. Sometimes it's sharing your knowledge, teaching someone how to fix a sink, manage their bills, or cook a family recipe. When we give back, even in small ways, we create meaning. We remind ourselves that we still have something to offer. And that feeling, that sense of connection and value, it fills the heart like nothing else. You don't need to be young, rich, or powerful to make a difference. All you need is the willingness to care, even 1 hour a week, even one kind word. Giving reminds us that we're still here for a reason, and that our story isn't over. It's still being written. Habit number 5. They focus on health, not just longevity. There was a time when I believed health meant living as long as possible, eating the right things, taking the right pills, seeing the doctor regularly, all to extend the years. But after turning 70, I began to realize something. It's not about how many years I have left. It's about the quality of the ones I do. I've seen people live well into their 90s, but they spent the last decade stuck in a chair, bitter, disconnected, and tired. And I've seen others pass earlier, but live their days with energy, laughter, and grace. The difference wasn't just medical. It was mindset. So I made a quiet decision. I would stop obsessing over staying alive and start investing in living well. That started with the basics. I began walking every morning, not far, just enough to feel the air in my lungs and the blood moving in my legs. I started paying attention to what I ate, not dieting, but nourishing. More colors on my plate, less processed stuff. I drank more water, got more sleep. I even started doing light stretches, something I used to think was for other people. But even more than the physical things, I focused on peace. Stress is a quiet killer, and for years I carried too much of it. I started practicing deep breathing, sitting quietly in the mornings without TV or distractions. I learned how to notice my own thoughts and let them go instead of chasing them around all day. Health isn't just about numbers on a chart. It's about waking up in the morning and feeling like you want to be here. It's being able to get down on the floor and play with your grandkids. It's having the strength to garden, laugh, hug, cook, dance, even if it's just a little. You don't need to train for a marathon. You don't need to be perfect. But every small step, every good choice, every quiet moment of care adds up. You deserve to feel good in the body you have. No matter your age, health is still yours to nurture. Habit number 6. They make peace with the past. The past has a funny way of sticking with us. You think you've moved on? That time has healed the old wounds. But then, out of nowhere, a smell, a song, a photo brings it all back. The mistake you made, the person you lost, the thing you didn't say when you had the chance. In my own life, I've made more than a few wrong turns. There were moments when I chose pride over love. There were doors I closed that maybe I shouldn't have. And for a long time, I carried that with me, like a shadow. But here's what I've learned. Sitting on my porch, with more years behind me than ahead, we cannot rewrite what has already been lived. We can only decide how we carry it forward. There was a time I couldn't even walk past a certain street without feeling a lump in my throat. It reminded me of someone I lost, someone I hadn't made peace with. For years I avoided it, but one day I stopped. I stood there. I let the memory come, and I didn't run. That was the beginning. I started to sit with my past instead of hiding from it. I stopped trying to judge it like a courtroom. Right, wrong, guilty, innocent, and just let it be what it was. Part of my story. Making peace doesn't mean forgetting. It means no longer allowing the past to steal joy from the present. It means saying, yes, that happened, and I have learned from it, and I will still live a good life. We all have ghosts. We all have things we wish we could change. But at some point, we have to stop asking the past to give us peace and start giving peace to ourselves. If you're still carrying something heavy, ask yourself, is it helping you live better, or is it holding you back? You can let it down. You can make space for peace. And in doing so, you make space for joy. Habit number 7. They stay curious about life. Curiosity isn't just for the young. Somewhere along the way, many of us were told that getting older means getting stuck in our ways, losing interest in new things, and settling into routines that never change. But the people I've met, the ones who truly thrive in retirement, never stop asking questions. They never stop exploring. They stay curious. I remember walking through a farmer's market one Saturday morning. I stopped at a booth I'd never noticed before, selling homemade jams with flavors I'd never heard of, like fig and lavender. My first instinct was to skip it, but something in me said, try something different. So I did, and it was surprisingly good. That moment stuck with me, not because of the jam, but because of what it represented. I still had the capacity to be surprised. That one small moment led to more. I started reading books on topics I'd never explored: astronomy, history, even poetry. I watched documentaries about places I'd never visit. But that sparked something in me anyway. I asked my grandchildren to teach me how to use new apps. I even tried Tai Chi in the park, just because I'd always been curious about it. Being curious doesn't mean you need to climb a mountain or go skydiving. It simply means staying open, looking at the world with a sense of wonder, like you did when you were 10, asking why, how, and what if again. Curiosity keeps us alive, not just biologically, but spiritually. It prevents us from shrinking into a smaller world. It invites us to grow even when everything around us tells us we're done growing. So if you catch yourself thinking, that's not for me, or I'm too old for that, stop and ask, what if I'm not? What if there's still more of the world and of myself I haven't discovered yet? Habit number 8. They practice gratitude every day. Gratitude is one of those words that gets thrown around so much it risks losing its meaning. But in my experience, gratitude, real gratitude, is not a performance. It's a quiet posture, a way of seeing the world that transforms ordinary moments into something sacred. There was a time when I took so much for granted: a warm bed, my morning coffee, the sound of my grandchild's laughter, the ability to take a deep breath without pain. Back then, I was too busy chasing something else: success, recognition, more money, more control. And when I finally slowed down, I realized I'd missed 1,000 tiny blessings that were right in front of me all along. Now, every morning, before I check the news or even get out of bed, I name 3 things I'm thankful for. Some days, it's simple things like, I woke up without pain, or the roses are blooming outside my window. Other days, it's deeper, like forgiveness or a second chance I never thought I'd get. This practice, just a few minutes each day, has softened me. It's made me more patient with others. It's made me less focused on what I've lost and more aware of what I still have. You don't have to write in a journal. You don't need fancy words. Just notice. Just say thank you, out loud in your heart, to God, to life, to whoever you believe in. Say thank you for the little things. They're the ones you'll miss most when they're gone. Gratitude doesn't erase pain. It doesn't ignore grief. But it helps you hold both joy and sorrow in the same hand. And that's the kind of strength we all need as we get older. Not hard strength, but soft, steady, enduring strength. Habit number 9, they embrace simplicity. The older I get, the more I understand the power of simple things. In my younger years, I filled my life with busyness, noise, and stuff. I chased promotions, filled my calendar, bought things I didn't need, and tried to keep up with a pace that was never mine to begin with. But now, I find joy in a slow morning, in sitting with my coffee for 20 minutes instead of rushing through it, in saying no to things that exhaust me and yes to what brings peace. I've learned that I don't need much to be happy. I need just enough, and sometimes even less than that. I started decluttering, not just my home, but my schedule, my expectations, even my thoughts. I let go of clothes I hadn't worn in years, gave away books I knew I'd never read again, and donated dishes collecting dust. But more importantly, I let go of the pressure to be everything to everyone. Simplicity isn't about being poor or living without. It's about making space for what matters. It's knowing that peace can't live in a cluttered mind or a chaotic environment. It's choosing a walk over a shopping trip, a quiet evening over constant stimulation, one good friend over a dozen shallow conversations. When I simplified my life, I started noticing things I'd missed before. The sound of birds in the morning, the warmth of a fresh towel, the peace of an uncluttered room. And in that noticing, I found contentment. We live in a world that pushes more news, more noise, more stuff. But sometimes happiness comes when we stop adding and start subtracting. When we say, this is enough, I am enough. Habit number 10, they live intentionally. If there's one habit that brings everything together, it's this one, living with intention. For much of my life, I let the days carry me. I'd wake up, follow the routine, check off the list, and go to bed. There were good moments, sure, but I didn't always ask myself, is this how I want to live? Is this who I want to be? I was surviving, achieving, pushing through, and I mistook that for living. Retirement gave me space. At first, too much of it. I didn't know what to do with an open calendar and no urgent tasks. But over time, I discovered that this stage of life can be the most meaningful if we choose to be present. Intentional living doesn't mean controlling everything. It means waking up and deciding, today I will live on purpose. It means asking, what really matters to me? How do I want to spend my time, my energy, my love? For me, that meant having slow breakfasts with my daughter every Sunday, taking daily walks without my phone, spending time each week writing letters to people I care about, even if they never write back. It meant saying, I love you more often. It meant building routines that nourish instead of drain. When we live with intention, we stop letting the days blur together. We stop waiting for someday. We stop postponing joy. We realize that the small things, preparing a meal with care, calling a friend just to listen, watching the sky change colors, are not fillers in our lives. They are life. I've known folks who spent retirement just passing time, watching the hours go by, waiting for something to happen. And I've known others who lived each day as a gift. The difference wasn't their bank account or their health. It was how they chose to show up to the moment they were in. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a perfect plan. But you can wake up tomorrow and decide, I will live this day fully, kindly, and with meaning. That's what intentional living is. And it changes everything. A life without regrets. Looking back, I don't claim to have done it all right. I've stumbled. I've hurt people. I've wasted time. I've missed opportunities. But I've also grown. I've learned. And little by little, I've made peace with my life. Not because it's been perfect, but because I've chosen to live it more honestly. These 10 habits, they're not just advice. They're pieces of a path toward peace, connection, joy, and forgiveness. A path I'm still walking every single day. Maybe you're just starting retirement. Maybe you've been in it for years. Maybe some of these habits already feel familiar, and maybe others feel out of reach. That's okay. You don't have to do everything at once. Just choose one. Start small. Give yourself grace. Because here's the truth. It's never too late to live well. It's never too late to make peace, to reconnect, to forgive, to begin again. This life, it's not over. There are still mornings to wake up to, still laughter to share, still stories to tell, still people to love. And if you're here, if you're listening, if your heart is still open, even just a little, then you have everything you need to live a life without regrets. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take good care of yourself. And remember, the best part of your story might still be ahead.